It was supposed to be just another quiet walk around the block, me, my service dog Max, and a clear sky above. Max isn't just a pet, he's trained, registered, and a lifeline for me. Everyone in the neighborhood knows him. He wears a vest, walks calmly, and never causes trouble. But that didn't stop Karen, our local HOA president, from creating the kind of chaos you only hear about in viral videos. She had always given me weird looks, constantly muttering about unleashed dogs or animal mess. Even though Max was always on leash and by the book, but nothing prepared me for what happened that afternoon. Out of nowhere, as I walked past the community garden where Karen happened to be pulling weeds, she snapped. She accused me of violating HOA rules, again, even though Max has every legal right to be there. Before I could even explain, she reached into her oversized purse, pulled out a can of mace, and sprayed Max right in the face. I couldn't believe it. My service dog, blinded and crying out, collapsed at my feet. Neighbors started rushing out. Someone called 911. But what Karen didn't realize in that moment was this wasn't just a petty HOA complaint, was a federal offense. And when the police showed up and started asking questions, things unraveled faster than anyone expected. You won't believe what they found next door, where it led her. Trust me, this is one Karen story that went way too far. Max was still whimpering as I knelt beside him, trying to flush his eyes with the water bottle I had in my bag. He's trained to stay calm in emergencies, but even he couldn't hide the pain. A couple neighbors ran over. One brought out a bowl of clean water. Another had already called 911. Karen stood there with the can of mace still in her hand, not even trying to hide it. She looked proud, like she had just stopped a threat. Asked her, "Why would you do that?" "He's a service dog." Her response, "That thing doesn't belong near the garden. I've warned you before." What she didn't realize was Max isn't just a registered service animal, he's federally protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act. Spraying him isn't just animal cruelty, it's a federal offense. And with witnesses, video, doorbells nearby, and Max clearly wearing his vest. She had zero excuse. As we waited for the first responders, I pulled out my phone and took photos of Max, of Karen, and of the can still in her hand. One of the neighbors whispered to me, "She's been going off on everyone lately. You're not the first she's harassed." That caught my attention. I'd thought her anger was just about dogs, but maybe this went deeper. When the paramedics arrived, they rushed to rinse Max's eyes and check his breathing. The police were right behind them. And as they approached Karen, she tried to talk her way out of it, but the officer's face said everything was about to change. The officer separated us quickly, one talking to me, the other pulling Karen aside. I could hear her from a few feet away, insisting Max had lunged at her, which was completely false. He had been walking at my side, calm as always, never even barking. The officer asked if I had proof of Max's training. I showed him everything: registration papers, vet records, even a laminated card I keep in my wallet showing Max's service dog ID. He nodded and took notes. I could tell he was already piecing together what really happened. Meanwhile, a small crowd had formed. A few neighbors stepped forward to give statements. One woman, Jen, said she'd seen Karen yelling at kids who biked too close to the garden just the week before. Another man said she had been complaining about dog people ruining the neighborhood. It was clear this wasn't just a one-time outburst. Karen had been building resentment for a while as paramedics checked Max again. One of them quietly told me I'd done the right thing by documenting everything immediately. They'd handled a similar case before, and it didn't end well for the person who used the spray. But the real twist came when the officer came back with a question I didn't expect. "Did you know Karen has filed multiple HOA complaints against you this month?" I was shocked. I hadn't received anything official. Suddenly, it felt like this attack wasn't random, it was personal. And I was about to find out just how far Karen had gone when the officer mentioned the HOA complaints. Something in my gut turned. I hadn't received any notices, but Karen clearly had something in motion behind the scenes. I asked him if I could see them, and he said they'd been included in her statement claims of dangerous animal behavior, harassment, and violating community safety standards. It was a paper trail meant to paint me on Max's a threat. It suddenly made sense. She wasn't acting out of impulse. She'd been building a false case. I called the HOA the next morning, and after some pressure, they finally sent over the complaints. They were ridiculous. One accused Max of chasing children. Another claimed I'd verbally threatened Karen while walking my dog. None of them had dates, times, or witnesses, just Karen's word. But the scariest part, she'd marked everyone as urgent. That same day, a letter arrived at my door. A warning from the HOA that they'd be reviewing my standing in the community due to repeated violations. I felt sick. This wasn't just about what happened to Max. Karen had tried to get ahead of the fallout by painting herself as the victim. I started gathering my own evidence, witness statements, security footage from my neighbor's camera, and my entire text history with the HOA. Max was recovering slowly, but I could still see the stress in his eyes. And while part of me wanted to focus on helping him heal, I knew I had to fight back. Karen crossed a legal line, and now it was time for accountability. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get more twisted, I received a voicemail from an HOA board member, one who usually kept quiet at meetings. He said, "You might want to check the community newsletter before it goes out." Confused, I logged on to the HOA portal, and there it was. A drafted article titled Maintaining Safety Around Pets in Shared Spaces. But it wasn't just about safety, it was a passive-aggressive smear campaign. The entire write-up hinted at recent, dangerous animal incidents, failure to comply with leash laws, and even a call for revisiting pet restrictions in HOA neighborhoods. They hadn't mentioned me or Max by name, but it was clear who they were referring to. Worse, Karen was listed as the author. That was the moment it clicked. She wasn't just trying to discredit me to the board. She was trying to create a paper trail to justify what she did before any legal fallout hit her. If enough people believed Max was a threat, the narrative might protect her from real consequences. And this newsletter would be emailed to every resident. I printed out the draft and rushed over to the police station. The officer I'd spoken to before took one look and said, "She's trying to rewrite the story." Meanwhile, Max was still healing, his eyes better, but his behavior noticeably more cautious. The stress had clearly impacted him. I knew then I had to do more than just defend myself. I had to stop Karen's narrative cold and make sure the real story was the one that stuck. I showed up to the HOA board meeting with a thick folder in my hands and Max by my side, vest and all. He walked in calm, steady, even after everything. I had alerted the police ahead of time, and the same officer who handled the original report agreed to attend. Karen sat at the front of the room, acting as if nothing had happened. But the moment I stood up to speak, her smile faded. I laid it all out, every false complaint she filed, witness statements, security footage of Max walking calmly beside me, and the trail cam still that showed her holding the can of mace. Then I handed over the draft of her newsletter to the board, and the room went silent. A few residents murmured. One even said out loud, "That's not what really happened." Then came the real twist. The officer stood up and calmly announced that after reviewing everything, including her attempt to fabricate a safety, Karen would be facing misdemeanor charges for animal cruelty and falsifying a report. But that wasn't all. Because Max is a federally protected service dog, federal charges were now also under review. Karen froze, completely caught off guard. She tried to claim she didn't know, but the board wasn't having it anymore. They voted to remove her from her position that same night. And just when I thought it was over, the quiet board member passed me a note. "You're not the first, but you're the one who finally stopped her." After that night, everything started to settle down. The HOA issued a formal apology both to me and to Max and made it clear that service animals are protected under federal law and welcomed in all community spaces. They also introduced a new policy. All future complaints must include verifiable evidence, and anyone caught filing false reports could face fines or suspension of HOA privileges. That small change felt like a big win for every quiet neighbor who'd been too scared to speak up before. Karen, she moved out within the month. No goodbye, no note, just gone. I heard through the grapevine that she tried to argue her case in court. But once the footage and witness statements were presented, the outcome wasn't in her favor. While the federal charges were ultimately downgraded, she still walked away. With a record and a reputation that will follow her, Max bounced back better than I expected. He's back to his usual calm self, tail wagging, head held high. I still take him on those same walks around the block, only now more neighbors stop to say hi. A few even thanked me for standing up not just for myself, but for everyone tired of being pushed around by power-hungry HOA politics.